Let's take another look through the morning's newspapers. I'm pleased to say that Marianne and Nigel are with us again. There they are. Marianne and Nigel, thank you for staying with us. All right, let's get straight into this. And this is the front page of the Sunday Mirror. Now, I've got it down here. My producer says that Nigel wants to speak about this, but just for fun, because it's your paper, Nigel, let's get Marianne to comment on the front page of the Sunday Mirror. This is Dame Kelly Holmes, who has announced in an exclusive interview with the Mirror that she is gay. Wonderful news for Dame Kelly. We all wish her well. It's kind of sad that we have to still talk about people coming out, though, at this stage, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. This idea of kind of outing. Obviously, Dame Kelly's doing it on her own terms. It's kind of a shame, perhaps, that it's taken 34 years. I hope that that's a personal decision, that she's kind of gone, well, you know, it's not anybody's business, perhaps, but my own. But the reality is that perhaps it's a sign that things are finally changing.
Cautiously said, yes.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of got our first professional footballer who's come out as gay, but he's the only one. I mean, does that mean that there's this massive lack of talent because people go, football is not for me, I'm gay, so I'm out? Or is it that we have other footballers who just don't feel comfortable saying they're gay? And that's true of sports people. Rebel Wilson recently was outed aggressively and kind of preempted. So it still happens, and we need to move on. Come on, guys.
Yeah, we certainly do. But Nigel, congrats on the scoop and your front page. Tell us why this is such an important story for the Mirror, and more broadly, of course, as Marianne was saying there.
Well, why I think it's important is that the sad part about this is that Dame Kelly didn't feel that she could say this before, and she talks about a huge relief in being able to be honest about her sexuality now. All this stems back to 1988, when she was a 17-year-old soldier, and that's when she discovered for the first time that she was gay. Now, of course, back then, being gay in the military was banned, and that ban wasn't lifted until 2000. That meant there were 20,000 armed forces personnel who were either drummed out of the forces, or some even went to jail after court-martials just because of their sexuality. As Marianne's been talking about, attitudes have changed. Now that the MOD recognises that policy was wrong, Priti Patel is now offering pardons to all those who were convicted. For the first time at Remembrance Sunday back in November, a contingent of veterans who had been thrown out of the forces were able to lay a wreath of the cenotaph. So things are moving on. The big thing now really is there should be some compensation for these people, and that's where the government is dragging its heels.
We'll see if that is coming. I know there are discussions around that. Nigel, thank you, Marianne, for that as well. Let's move on to the front page of the Sunday Express. This is one that you've picked out, Marianne. This is the Attorney General, Suella Braverman, saying, I'll read it out, it's time to take control of our borders. What, have we gone back to the debates of Brexit?
Yeah. Now there you were thinking that it had moved on. No. It's basically a rehash. It's a kind of another. Depending on your politics, depending on your position on this, and it's kind of unfortunate that it falls down these quite polarised lines, just as polarised as it was in 2016, either people going, hang on a minute, this isn't what the argument is, and other people saying, it's time to take that control, we need to protect our borders, that Europe is the bad guy, they're the enemy, they're trying to steal our sovereignty, have jurisdiction over Britain, and they shouldn't, we should be ruling the waves, all that stuff. Surely time now for a slightly more nuanced, slightly more grown-up, slightly less polarised debate about the role of the European Convention on Human Rights. The reason this is in the news, I think you've been living under a rock this week if you don't know about it already, because of the plan to fly asylum seekers to Rwanda for their cases to be processed there. In the High Court and the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal in the UK, it was deemed that this policy wasn't... Now, hang on, I need to phrase this correctly. It was appropriate for the Home Secretary to be able to proceed with plans, as in flying these, deporting these people to Rwanda, but the European Court on Human Rights, which is separate to the European Union, said, actually, a minute, you have to wait until it's been determined within British courts whether it is lawful or not, because there's a judicial review that will be due next month. So Suella Braverman is saying basically maybe we need to change this. Don't forget, this is already in these laws around human rights are already enshrined in British law as part of the Human Rights Act. So it's not that it's not our law; it's just being decided by a judge who happens to be not in London or Bradford or Wolverhampton or Glasgow. They are still our laws, and we are still signatories. And I think if we're kind of tearing up international laws, international agreements, then there's a risk perhaps to the Good Friday Agreement, because that will be undermined. We still have a responsibility to refugees under international law. So in the article, Suella Braverman is quoted as saying, it's time to complete Brexit and let the British people decide who can and cannot stay in our country. If anything, if ever there were an unhelpful thing to say, it's that. And I think at that point you kind of go, this is political point scoring rather than acting in the best interests of the British people, our sovereignty, or our legal system.
Yeah, and this is the thing, isn't it, Nigel? Because as Marianne lays out there, the European Convention on Human Rights has the word Europe in there, but it's not part of the European Union. It's completely separate, and we signed up to it way before the European Union was even created. So it is this idea of kind of dragging us back into that argument that was taking place in 2016.
Yes, I mean they are separate, and I think people often misunderstand that. I've never really understood the Rwanda policy on the basis that either it was total incompetence by the government to even introduce it. It was fairly clear that there would be legal challenges. It was very unlikely that first plane would take off. So I see something rather more sinister going on here by the way that ministers are talking, and Suella Braverman is just the latest in doing that. And it seems to be that we are planning, and Rwanda was the catalyst to go and do this, to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. And I think that would be an absolute catastrophe. As an example of the previous story we're talking about with Kelly Holmes, that the gay ban in the military was only lifted in 2000 because of the European Court of Human Rights. That is why it's so important, and I find it really worrying that government ministers are obviously preparing the ground to start leaving it.
Yeah, Nigel, really important point there, linking that back to the European Convention. Marianne, just really quickly, if you want to just come in, we've only got a couple of seconds left. Go on.
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, often this debate about kind of human rights, it always goes back to foreign criminals claiming the right to a family life, meaning that they can't be deported. But actually, as Nigel says, this is actually about protecting our rights, all of our rights.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to be protected from your own government and their laws, and that's why you need these their policies. That's why you need these supranational rules.
Sorry to interrupt your rights to talk there, but plenty more to come on Sky News Breakfast.